So good morning, everyone, and welcome to the this issue of the Serenity series, Legal Learning for Intelligent Entrepreneurs. And today we're talking about brave boundaries in the context of contracts that care. When I first thought about this webinar, it was going to be a webinar on contracts that care with the hashtag of brave boundaries underneath. But as I started writing the slides, I discovered more and more that what I really needed to talk about first was brave boundaries, because until you get really clear on what your boundaries are and what they can do for you, it makes it really difficult to actually write a contract that cares, because as we'll find out towards the end of the webinar, contracts that care are all about communicating your boundaries. So you really need to dig deep into what actually are your boundaries, what do you care about, before you start communicating them. So to begin with, diving right in, a little bit about me to start with. Those of you who know me already know that I'm a homeschooling mum. I have 3 kids who are currently aged 7, 11 and 13, and most of my week is taken up with having fun with them and joining them on their learning adventures and exploring the world with them, which is a wonderful thing to do. Professionally, I'm a lawyer and a mediator. I've been a lawyer for just over 8 years now, and I've been a mediator for the past 4 years. Basically, I was going to give up on being a lawyer and become a mediator until I discovered that there was a world of beautiful female entrepreneurs out there who needed a lawyer just like me, someone who didn't want to tie them up in barbed wire fences based on fear and avoidance, but someone who was really about caring and loving and connection and communication in an open and awesome way, which is what most female entrepreneurs are. And so most of all these days, I'm an entrepreneur just like you. I'm someone building a business entirely from home, exploring what that means, playing with the personal development of it all, because it's as much a personal journey as it is a business journey. And the same thing goes for boundaries, and that's what we're going to discover today. So what we're going to talk about today is, starting with why are boundaries so important? What do they do for us? How do they fit into our lives, into our businesses? And really, why do we need them? Then we're going to have a quick look at what is a healthy boundary. So there are boundaries that are healthy and the boundaries that are unhealthy, and we're going to look into how to nudge your boundaries towards that healthy end of the scale so that they're really supporting you and doing what you need them to do, rather than constraining you and locking you up. And then finally, we're going to get into the contracts that care part of the story and look at, how do you let people know about your boundaries? How do you communicate them? How do you really invite them into understanding what it means to work with you? So boundaries, at their most basic, boundaries are self-care. And they're self-care not just for you, but they're self-care for your business. So there's a quote here from Tony Gaskins, which I love, which is, you teach people how to treat you by what you allow, what you stop, and what you reinforce. The problem is that you need to have clarity. I mean, that's pretty obvious, that how you let people treat you, where you draw the line. Oops. Dear. Yeah, there we go. Sorry, bumped my space bar. Where you draw the line, where you demand respect, what you put up with, or what you say, where you're consistent, all of those things determine how you are treated in your business, how your business treats you, how you treat your business. And they need to be taught, they need to be communicated, they need to be made obvious to other people. But before you can do any of that, you actually need to go in deep and discover what your boundaries actually are. Because if you don't have that clarity, how can you tell other people how you want to be treated when you don't actually know for yourself. And the answers to what you want and what you need can actually be quite surprising once you dig into where you are and how you feel about all of these things. The other side of self-care, and we know this when we look at our own personal self-care in relation to our health and our well-being, it relates to our business as well. The thing I see over and over again in my business is that the biggest person who tramples on your boundaries is most often you. So you can go to all of that trouble of saying, okay, this is what I want, these are my guidelines, this is how I'm going to move ahead, and then you ignore what you've set up for yourself. And I know that more than anyone, and Suzanne's here today, and Suzanne knows how good I am at, Suzanne Kohlberg, who's my weight loss coach and helper, she knows how good I am at setting boundaries for myself and then trampling all over them. So yeah, it's really, really easy to ignore your own boundaries. But the problem is, if you don't respect your own boundaries, if you don't have policies that you care about and you comply with yourself, if you don't live up to your own standards, how can you ask your clients to believe in those standards, those boundaries, those policies? So it's firstly, it's a state of getting clear on what you want, and then it's the need to actually apply them and to really live the boundaries that you've set for yourself. Because it's not just how other people treat you that's important with boundaries, it's how you treat yourself. So, looking at boundaries, how do we know what they are? How do we go deep? Boundaries are what is truly important to you, and they help you to clarify that. And when I say boundaries, I'm not just talking things like your business boundaries. Although this is business boundaries is our focus, when you're an entrepreneur, business is your life. And so boundaries become even more important. And it's really important to bring all of the boundaries that are important to you into your business. So that's going to be things like your personal boundaries, your emotional boundaries, because they are essential to managing your relationships. You need to know not just how you want to be treated, how you want to be communicated with, but how you want to feel in your business, all of those sorts of things. You know, where do you draw the line in respectful communication? What's important to you in terms of care for yourself and for your business? There's also your mental and your material boundaries. So that's even things like getting paid. What level of stress are you prepared to allow into your life? All of those sorts of things. So everything that affects the way you work, how you work, what you're working with, where is your zone of genius? Where do you feel, where's your comfort zone? How far outside your comfort zone do your boundaries let you stretch? And also, what rewards are required for you to feel valued in your business? And finally, there's your physical and your spiritual needs, because these affect your boundaries too. Where do you feel safe? What just physical self-care do you need to build into your business boundaries? Where are there lines that you won't cross in terms of your spiritual values, your sense of honesty, your sense of duty of care, all of those sorts of things? They're spiritual values as much as they are legal or business or commercial considerations. So it's really important to approach your boundaries when you're looking at what is truly important to me, what do my boundaries need to do? It's really important to approach that from a holistic perspective and really to bring in everything that is you, so that you end up with boundaries that are fully integrated into who you are, so that your business becomes a reflection of you. Although, as we'll discover a little bit further on, your business is not you. So there needs to be that separation between you and your business, as well as that full integration. So don't just approach your boundaries from a limited perspective of thinking, like consumer guarantees or refund policies. Really open up the inquiry to every aspect of what is important to me and how does this affect my business and my boundaries. So yeah, your boundaries are required to bring you into alignment with your values and your vision. So your values are the things that are important to you right now. They're the commitments that you have made to yourself, the commitments to how you want to work, what you want to work, who you want to work with, and who you want to be in that work. Your values tie into all of those spiritual needs, those physical needs, those personal and emotional needs, but also those mental and material needs. Where are you valued in your business? Where does your business value you? What qualities and considerations are essential to you to embody in your business? Those values are what will help you make sure that your boundaries are aligned holistically to every aspect of who you are. And then they also need to be forward focused. Your boundaries need to take into account your vision. Where are you heading? What are your goals, your aims, your vision of the future? What are you building? Because if you have boundaries that are too constrained, too stuck in where you are now, you're not going to be supported as you move forward into building that big empire. So, for example, your boundaries need to take into account, and not just your vision for yourself, but your vision for your business, but your vision for yourself, your vision for your family, your vision for every aspect of your future. So once again, it's that holistic, where am I going and how can my boundaries support me to get me in that direction? Which brings us into healthy boundaries. So what are healthy boundaries? Healthy boundaries, there are two aspects to healthy boundaries. Once you've worked out where your alignment is, and what's important to you, what your values and your vision are, and you've got that clear perspective of where you're going and how you want to get there, you start developing your boundaries, but then you need to check them against these two really important considerations. A boundary that is not internally aligned, one that's not consistent with is not integrated with your values and vision, one that has mismatches or cognitive dissonance, like you say one thing but you do another, it's not internally aligned. If a boundary isn't internally aligned, then you're not going to stick to it. You're going to feel at odds with it all the time. And a good example of this is with refund policies, because if your refund policy is that I do not give refunds under any circumstances, and yet internally your values are to be generous, to be open, to be a giving person, to take full responsibility for someone else's satisfaction, then you're not going to feel comfortable with that refund policy boundary. You're going to feel that it's icky, it's too tight, it's barbed wire, it's really, really, really scratchy and uncomfortable, like wearing a stiff suit, a stiff suit of armor or something when you actually want to be out there flying naked. So that's one of the reasons why it's really important to get clear on your values and vision, so that you can create boundaries that are internally aligned with who you are and who you want to be. And then that brings us into the other important principle, which is external consistency. So even when you have internally aligned boundaries, it's really important to actually apply them in the outside world, so that you treat everybody the same, that you aren't reinventing the wheel every time an issue crops up, that you actually live by your boundaries by doing them over and over and over again so that they become a part of you. And that external consistency is what helps other people to trust you, to believe that you will do what you say you will do, that builds your business reputation, that builds you that reputation for honesty, for quality of service, for being someone who is amazing to work with. So there's those two perspectives. Get clear on your values and vision, and then use that values and vision to create your boundaries, checking in with them, making sure they're internally aligned, and then also checking in with how you're going to apply them externally in a consistent manner. Does that make sense? How are we going? Any questions so far? All good. Okay, awesome. So healthy boundaries are flexible, because even though you've got external consistency, and it's really important to have that consistent application, to be true to your boundaries, to not trample over them, to apply them, they also need to be adaptable. So once you've got your boundaries and they're clearly defined, you know what they are, you can communicate them consistently and easily, you can apply them consistently and easily, they feel good to you, they also need to be agile. They also need to give you that freedom to depart from them in certain circumstances, because you are the boss of your business. You are the one in control here. You are the one who can make exceptions. I'm just going to mute you, Kylie. Hi, Kylie. It's lovely to see you. So yeah, you're the one who needs to be adaptable. You're the one who, when new situations arise, you need to have that freedom to compare them, to run them against your boundaries and make exceptions to the rule. Rules are no good if they are so rigid that you just shatter. And that's why I've got the glass dragon there for unhealthy boundaries, because a glass boundary, that a boundary that is so rigid that there is no space for you to respond thoughtfully, mindfully, and tweak your boundaries, to depart from your boundaries in exceptional circumstances, to have that ability to really empathize with others. That boundary is not going to be internally aligned either. So unhealthy boundaries are limited or non-existent. So that's when you just make it up as you go along. Unhealthy boundaries can be wishy-washy, which is where you say, okay, this is my boundary, this is what I'm going to do, and then you do this. This is my boundary, this is how I'm going to be, and then you do this. So when you depart from them constantly, when no one can really be certain of what's going to happen because you're never really, you know, you lay down and give in at the first sign of trouble or whatever else it is, you don't have that confidence to stand behind your own boundaries. You let them be pushed back all of the time. But at the same time, unhealthy boundaries are rigid, where you just say, this is the boundary, this is it, and no further. There are times when you need to stand strong behind your boundaries and enforce them. But you also need to be able to see beyond them, to have some give and take available to you, rather than being that kind of rigid structure that cannot give, because that's the type of structure that breaks. That's the type of structure that can't grow for the future. And that's the next thing we need. Your healthy boundaries need to stay current. So you need to be able to tweak them. You need to be able to revisit them regularly. When you get new situations, you need to be able, that's right, a branch that doesn't bend in the wind breaks. Exactly. And a branch needs to grow. And as it grows, it needs to adapt to whatever the changing circumstances are. So it can be too easy to think that boundaries are just set and forget, and they're not. They're living things that need to be revisited regularly. They need to be, what works for you in one situation may not work in the future. And if you look at most traditional legal contracts, and they are written in such inflexible language, and they are really, that whole barbed wire sense of fear and avoidance is all about trying to cover unforeseen circumstances. And that sort of, how can you rigidly cover unforeseen circumstances? It's better to have that sense that we are going to evolve, we are going to grow, we're going to need to change over time. Because that gives you the flexibility of being, as you said, being responsive, being adaptable. The kind of boundaries that are suitable when you're a startup are going to be different from the kinds of boundaries that are suitable for you when you're in the mid-level of your business, when you're in that expansion phase. They're going to be different from the types of boundaries that you're going to need once you get people working with you, once you take on staff or outsource things. They're going to be different to the kind of boundaries you're going to need once you become a big business and you're actually a corporate type business rather than a sole trader. So at every stage, boundaries need to adapt. And so, I see this often when people come to me with contracts. They've been what I call flying naked for years, which means not having any legal documents, but just having their basic boundaries. And if they've been in business for years, then obviously they've got those boundaries, but they've been adaptable and flexible with them. But the risk level has changed. The amount that people are investing with them has changed. Their sense of safety has changed. And so they're needing towards more solid ways to communicate those boundaries to other people. So boundaries need communication. It does not matter how good, how aligned, how consistent your boundaries are if you're the only person who knows what they are. Now, this goes for all kinds of boundaries. We know that, it's no good expecting kids to obey the rules if we haven't told them what the rules of the household are. It's no good expecting our partner to understand instantly how we want to be treated and how we need our emotions. We need to manage our emotions best if we haven't communicated that to them. But in the context of this webinar, we're going to focus on communicating your business boundaries. And there are a number of ways you can communicate your business boundaries. Everything from all of your legal documents, the sole purpose or the primary purpose of a legal document is communicating your business boundaries. But that externally consistent application means your business boundaries also need to be visible in your marketing, in your communication, your emails, your phone conversations with your clients. You need that consistency over and over again, where it's just that you have a way of working that is so right, so aligned for you that it becomes second nature. And then it becomes easy to talk about. It becomes easy to make sure that your message, what you're teaching your clients, is also aligned with your boundaries. So it's no good having boundaries that are in one direction and then your message and what you're telling clients to do is completely different. So it's that whole internal alignment, external consistency, and communicate. Communication through contracts that care. Contracts that care are the best way to provide provide your clients with really clear, really obvious, well thought out ways of understanding your boundaries. A contract that care gives your clients certainty. That means they know exactly what to expect. They know when your working hours are. They know what they are going to get from you and when, what your deliverables are. They have that certainty of knowing what to do if something goes wrong. And it gives you that same certainty. So it's self-care. It's care for you, and it's care for your business, and it's care for your clients. They give clarity. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to explain this stuff to every client every time, because you've got it all written down in your contract, and it's easily understandable, it's readable, it communicates at the same level as your marketing. So that this is why I write contracts that care in, and I say they should be written in the love language that your clients deserve and expect from you, because they need to be understandable. You can't be tying them up in knots of red tape, because you want them to feel held by the contract. You want them to feel that they know where they stand, where you stand, and can really, really understand every aspect of how working with you is going to unfold. And the last thing they give your clients and you is consistency. So for you, you have that knowledge of, well, that beautiful feeling that everything rolls out, that you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to panic like a chook with its head cut off every time something goes a little bit pear-shaped, every time your boundaries start to stretch, every time you're outside your comfort zone, because you can check in with your boundaries as they are expressed in your contract, and you can bring yourself back into that place where you feel safe and where your client feels held and protected as well. And the other thing is that your clients know that they are being treated consistently with all of your other clients. So there's no issues of favoritism, of of people feeling hard done by because you did this for someone and you did something else for someone else. They've got that consistency of understanding exactly how things work with you. And they know that if they come back to you again and again and again, that they can trust you to provide that same quality level of service. And that is what brings clients back again and again and again as repeat clients. And it's studies have shown that most businesses make their money from repeat clients. Your return on investment is so much more because you're not out there marketing, trying to educate them and bring them in and starting from scratch every time. You've got clients who already know, they are certain that you are the right person to work with because they know what they're going to get from you. They are clear about where your boundaries are and how those boundaries protect both of you, and they know that they'll be treated consistently. So what do boundaries in a contract actually do for you? The first thing is that boundaries protect your sanity. Have you ever had a client who was like a little baby bird? It's feed me, feed me, feed me, feed me, chap, 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 attention, 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 want more, want more, want more, want more. Those kind of clients are a drain on your energy. And every client has the potential to be that if they don't know where your boundaries are. So boundaries give you that beautiful support in saying no when a situation is not right for you. One of the first things your contract that cares can do in terms of protecting your sanity and supporting you in saying no is weed out those clients who are unsuitable. So who is your business designed to serve? Who is it not designed to? Who is not going to be a good fit for working with you? And your contract can set those boundaries for you. It can tell people really clearly so they can start to self-select and know from the moment they read the contract, this is not the right person for me to work with. And by weeding them out at that early stage, you actually do a much better job of protecting your sanity because you don't have to deal with them when things start to go wrong. So you've actually set that boundary and allowed them to self-select and say, this is not the right person for me. So for me, for example, my contracts, my marketing on my website, it says, if you're after a bulldog lawyer, then I'm not the right person for you, because I don't want clients coming to me saying, I've got this dispute and I need you to actually go to war for me. And, you know, that's not where I want my energy to flow. So I want to attract clients who really want that beautiful, loving communication style of contract. And so everything around my marketing, my contracts, everything else is all aligned with who I am in that sense, what energy I want my business to be putting out, because the energy that I'm putting out in that way is what attracts the right clients to me. Another thing they help you say no to is urgency. And this is one of my boundaries where I haven't been externally consistent because I haven't taken the trouble to work out where I'm internally aligned. I have had a habit of saying yes to everything, and if it's urgent work, then I'll push everything else aside to say, yes, I can do that. I can, you know, I can trample on my own boundaries. I can forget my self-care. I can forget my family. I can forget everything else to deliver this because you need it urgently, and that's most important. That's a boundary for me that hasn't been working lately. So it's one of the things that I'm checking in with. What do I actually care about in this situation? How am I going to make this work for me? So I'm actually starting to put into my contracts an urgency fee, so that for clients who need something immediately, they're going to have to pay more for that, because it often works out. One thing I've noticed is that the clients who need things and who expect me to have them done for them urgently, immediately, are the ones who can actually afford to pay more for the service, and they're just taking advantage of me, my desire to please and get things out for them quickly. So for those bigger clients who need that work immediately, they can pay that extra fee, or they can wait and pay the same as everybody else. So I've got that boundary now that I can apply consistently. It's internally aligned. It feels good. It feels like I am protecting myself. It feels like I'm protecting what's important to me personally, my opportunity to go to the beach and spend time with my family. It's important. It's protecting me emotionally. I feel respected. I feel rewarded. I feel cared for if people are willing to pay that extra for my time if they're going to stress me out. It's important for me mentally, because the extra money means that I can take a little bit more time after doing an urgent job to recover. I can take that break. I can write that break into my timetable because I've actually made that little bit of extra money putting myself under pressure. Materially, I'm actually feeling rewarded that my work is valued, including that need for things urgently. You know, if you need it urgently, if you need me to pull out all the stops, you're going to value me enough to pay for my time. So I'm feeling materially rewarded. Physically, it feels much better because I feel physically safer that that stress that's on me is not going to be happening all the time. Like, I have a boundary there to protect myself, that I'll only put myself under stress occasionally, because not every client is going to want to pay for that urgency fee. And lastly, spiritually, it feels really aligned with everything I am, that I am caring for myself enough to step up and say, I value my time, I value my sanity, you need to respect that too. I'm not a machine. I am someone who really needs to take time to do a good job. I care about doing a good job, and if it's going to happen, that if it absolutely has to happen now, then we need to talk about how to make this happen in a way that's aligned. Scope creep is a big one. The client who says, I want you to do this, and then they add this, and they add this, and they add this, and they add this. Absolutely, your contract draws the boundaries around exactly what the deliverable is, so that people know exactly what to expect. They're not adding more to the shopping basket all the time and expecting that to be all included in the one price. And your work hours. You can set the times when clients contact you. You can tell people, I don't work on weekends. You can tell people, these are my work days. It will take me this long to produce this for you, or I only accept calls during these times. Or you can, setting your acuity boundaries and only having certain days open for client calls. All of those things support your sanity, and they're all areas where you need your boundaries to support you in saying no to areas where you would actually trample your own boundaries. Boundaries limit your responsibility. And so for those of us who are helpers, healers, rescuers, those of us who feel like we are the angel, we're everybody else's guardian angel. We need to fix their problems. We need to help them. We need to be the ones who are, setting everybody else free. Boundaries help us remember that not everything is our problem. So, the first one, you are not your business. You are, but you are not. This was one that I actually found this out in working with Tori Cruz a long time ago, where we worked out a system of bags that I have in my head, and I forget this from time to time, and every time I remember it, it's such an important boundary that I really need to hold it front and center. So I thought I'd share it with you today. And that was having a vision of my bag, my business's bag, and God's bag, or universe, or spirit, or whatever you want to call it, source. So when something happens, when a thought comes into my head, I can file it. Is it my problem? Do I need to deal with it right now? Is it something that requires my urgent attention? It goes in my bag. Is it something that my business needs to deal with? So for example, things like managing my business expenses and things like that, that's my business's bag. It's not me personally. So you develop that little bit of sense of separateness from your business so that you can step back from it. And you have your God bag, or your source bag, or your universe bag, which everything else, your clients stress out about them not having what they need, even though that's not something that you can provide for them. It goes in the God bag. Your worry about what someone's going to think about you if you enforce your boundaries, pop it in the God bag. Separate out what is mine to deal with right now. What is something for my business to deal with, for my business to think about, for my business to hold on to for me? And all of your upcoming work, that all goes in the business bag. So you only take out of your business bag and put into your bag the thing that you are working on right now. And that allows your business bag, your business, to hold all of that stress, to hold all of that, all of those chirping clients, all of those things. They're not in your personal bag. You're not carrying them around all the time. Have the boundary of mentally sorting that stuff into your business bag, or even into the God bag. If it's not something that's yours to deal with at all, if it's something you can't fix or change, put it in God's bag and let him worry about it. Let the universe hold it. Return it to source. Another way that boundaries limit your responsibility in a contract is in disclaimers. And disclaimers set the boundary between where your responsibility, your duty of care, what you are undertaking specific liability for ends, and where your clients have to take responsibility for their own safety, where they need to do their own research, make sure they're making informed choices, make sure they're standing in their own power and not handing that power over to you. Disclaimers. Boundaries limit your responsibility in terms of complaints and refund policies, because they set out really clearly, this is what you need to do if you have a problem with me. If you're not happy, here's the process. Here is how you can get your money back. Here is how you can activate your consumer guarantees if something's not fit for service, if you haven't received what you believed you were entitled to receive. And leading on from that is your dispute resolution process. Boundaries also allow you to take complaints on board and learn from them. So the customer who complains is actually one of your greatest assets, because they show you where your boundaries, where your marketing, where your other work, with what you're delivering is not internally aligned or externally consistent. So if they're complaining, it shows somewhere that your boundaries are out of whack, and you need to go back and fine tune, where is my boundary around this complaint? Do I need to either improve my service, improve my communication, tighten up my contract so that it expresses my boundary better to avoid this complaint, or tighten up my marketing so that I'm not promising something that I'm not delivering, or not giving that expectation when it's not something I'm prepared to stand behind? Or, you know, how do I need to adapt my boundaries so that this complaint doesn't happen again? The unhappy customer who never complains, who goes away unhappy, is no use to you. You want either 100% happy customers, or customers who feel comfortable enough to complain because their perception of what they've received is not matching your perception of what you're putting out there. And that gives you that opportunity to tighten those boundaries. And finally, dispute resolution, which gives everybody the clarity, the certainty, and the consistency of knowing if there is a problem, we have a structured way to deal with it. So you don't have that panic that, there's a problem, everything's going to go, you know, I'm going to lose my house, everything's going to go awfully wrong, it's going to all fall down, the sky is falling. Instead, you can respond calmly with consideration, because you have that process to follow. Yeah, so Suzanne said that she had a complaint the other day and it made her feel lousy, but she never thought about it in terms of her being comfortable enough to raise it with her. Exactly. Your unhappy clients, unhappy consumers, people who are making a complaint are feeling comfortable enough to reach out to you to say to you, this isn't what I thought it was going to be. And you can then use that to check in with your boundaries. You can look at it in the perspective of the individual client. You know, how have I failed to serve her? What is her need that is not being met? And some cases, it's going to be just someone who complains. They're going to be a baby bird, a chirping baby bird. And you can say, okay, I need to strengthen my boundary and stand behind my boundary and use it to support me to say no to her, to explain that this is not, like, there's been a miscommunication, this is not what's happening, and then take that back to how do I need to adapt the message, the energy I'm putting out, so that this situation doesn't arise again in the future. And if you can't actually communicate it in such a way that it sits well with her, that she understands and that she's prepared to go forward, then you can go through your dispute resolution process to find a mutually win-win solution, and actually turn your complainant into somebody who feels like they have received value. Boundaries value your worth. So you are in the driving seat of your business, and the boundaries that you're putting in place are what help you to know that your business is worthwhile, to feel comfortable, to feel happy, to feel joyful in what you're delivering. So your boundaries lie behind your smooth systems. Your systems of accepting client appointments, communicating with clients, delivering work, collecting testimonials, all of those systems and processes that you put in place need to be in alignment with your values and vision, need to be consistent with your boundaries. Your risk management, so all of those worries and fears and what ifs, the things that hold you back, the things that make you feel like your business is unsafe, they can be addressed by boundaries. So putting boundaries around how often you check in with what is worrying you, where you're uncomfortable in your business, and how you deal with those things, whether you sort them into limiting beliefs that you can let fly away or real world dangers that need to take action on, and how and when you take action on those dangers. They're boundaries. Boundaries around client communication, you know, what systems you have in place to ensure you're not sending the wrong emails to the wrong clients, or whether you accept clients as Facebook friends. All of those boundaries are risk management, help you with risk management. So Carly says, I learned years ago that customers don't complain, they just leave, and that doesn't help you make any necessary changes in your business. Do I think more people complain these days? And is it part of being smarter and more aware and having more indirect ways to make their complaints? I actually think partly yes, it's in being more educated about their rights, particularly in terms of bigger business, in corporate business. But in our entrepreneurial style business, I think one of the reasons they might complain is that comfort level, that they feel they know you at a more personal level, and so that they're more willing to reach out. And so I think that particularly if we take that response that complaining clients give us that opportunity to improve, we can really learn from them and use it as a good thing, rather than, oh, more and more customers are complaining and it's not, you know, it's nothing to do with me and my service and what I'm delivering. It's all about them. Sometimes it is about them, but even when it is about them, you can look at how your marketing and your messages and your boundaries and your contracts might be attracting those complaints, how you might energetically be calling them in, and then tighten up your boundaries to actually smooth things out, so that you are being more, when you're more aligned and weeding out those people who are likely to complain at an earlier stage, you're less likely to receive complaints when you've got that commitment to best practice that your boundaries are all supporting you in. Boundaries also let you be yourself. They let you stand in your authenticity, because your boundaries are your boundaries. They're not, and that's why it's so important to make sure that your boundaries are aligned with your values and vision, rather than boundaries that you feel you should have because you've seen them somewhere else or they're someone else's boundaries. So that's why it's really, really absolutely important to get clear on your boundaries from your personal perspective. They need to be your boundaries, nobody else's boundaries. And boundaries allow you to be generous. So, but with limits. So they allow you to say, this is where I will work for free. This is what I will do. This is where I'm going to be generous. But you're not having that constant drain on your service by people expecting you to give, because your boundaries allow you to be generous within a defined space. They put limits around what you will give and what you will expect to be reciprocated for. And they also allow you to think, okay, I'm being reciprocated in other ways. So they allow you to step outside the cash reward system and think that, you know, I can give to clients in this way, but I expect to get this back. And that might be feedback, it might be testimonials, it might be market research. It allows clients to be generous to you too. So boundaries support you in generosity that is aligned and respects your worth. So we've got 6 minutes to finish up, so we're right on time, which is awesome. Where do we go from here? I hope that's really helped you understand the importance of boundaries, how to really form your boundaries, and then how to use those boundaries to communicate with your clients, is particularly in terms of your contracts, but in every aspect of your messaging. I am starting on the 6th of June, I'm starting my Brave and Beautiful Business Boundaries course. This is a 4-week course which is delivered by email, so it's a work at your own pace. There'll be daily emails on weekdays and then catch up time on the weekends and check-ins. We'll be looking at 16 different boundary areas which loosely relate to the various elements that we've just looked at. So things like supported ways to say no, forgotten now. Supported ways to say no, limiting your responsibility and valuing your worth. Those are the broad headings, but there'll be 16 various things. So we're looking at, time management and saying no and suitability and all of those sorts of things, consumer guarantees, authenticity, generosity, all of those things, looking at, and they're basically, each email is basically a journaling prompt. So I'll be asking you to, oh yes, it's transferable to other areas. Suzanne asked, is it transferable to other areas of your life as in personal boundaries? And yes, because it's such a self-directed learning style and there's such a crossover. So there will be a few boundaries that are specific to business, such as consumer guarantees, but the journaling prompts can also be applied to any aspect of your life. So basically what you get is in each email there's a quote for contemplation, there's a journaling prompt with a whole pile of questions about how you feel about this particular boundary, and then there's a little rating system. So you'll be asked to rate out of 10 how internally aligned you currently are with this boundary and how externally consistent you are in applying it. So at the end of the course you will have a journal where you have looked at 16 essential areas of business practice, best practice, and thought to yourself, really done that deep journey into what are my values and vision in relation to this boundary, this specific boundary, how internally aligned am I with my current practice, how externally consistent am I in applying this practice in my business, and what's one step that I can take to strengthen or tweak or improve this boundary? Where, what do I need to think about as I grow with it? Where is it rubbing? Where is it uncomfortable? Where do I need to really, where am I wishy-washy? Where am I being too rigid? All of those sorts of things, all of those questions will come up as you work through this course. So at the end, you're going to have a really clear certainty, clarity, and consistency around where your business boundaries are, so that if you're ready to tweak or revisit your contracts or create them from scratch, you're going to be in a much better place to do that from, because you're going to have that real understanding of where you're coming from. And even if you've already got contracts, as I said, it's important to make sure that you check in with your boundaries and keep them current. So it's a brilliant way to just check in, make sure, bring your boundaries up to date. Maybe I'll probably be taking into areas you haven't thought about before in terms of your business boundaries, and even in your personal boundaries. Yeah. So the early bird special that's open at the moment is $137.50. The full price is going to be $220. I'll pop the link for it, for the landing page, into the chat box in case you're interested. And yeah, there'll be, it'll just be the one email rolling out every other day, and for you to work through at your own time, and you'll have access to it forever, obviously, because it'll be in your email thing. And then in future years, I hope to offer a retreat to really explore this at a deeper level, but this is the first stage, which is the Brave and Beautiful Business Boundaries. If you want to have a look at what will be covered, there's a checklist on my resources page, which is a free checklist called the Brave Boundaries Checklist, and that actually sets out it very briefly the kind of things we'll be going to be covering, but we'll be going into them in much more detail with the prompts and the journaling. So, yes. Any questions? Yep. Where'd it go? Jumped. There we go. Any questions? How did we go? Carly's going to have a think on the issue of complaints and look into it more deeply, into what complaining actually means, and how it can actually be an advantage in your business when people complain. So Suzanne says the course sounds sensational. I hope so. It's been a long time in the making. It started out as just the checklist, and then I've I've run it as a free challenge in my group where we went quite deep with the questions and it was open up a lot of room for discussion. And then that's turned into the journaling aspect of the course, because I sit down and I journal these things myself quite regularly. So it's really good to just have that prompt to, you know, this is something you need to think about. You need to align it. Okay, so Kylie's got no questions and she loves the works out there and is going to share it with her circle, which is absolutely awesome. Feel free to share this around. I'll be promoting it for the next few weeks in various places as my main offer. And yeah, so that brings us to 11 o'clock. Time's up. Thank you so much for joining me live. It's been lovely to have you here, and we will see you around. Bye. Perfect on the timing. Yes, all lucky. Okay. Bye, everyone. You're very welcome.